All right, and we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our 8 p.m. 10 to 13 focus. I actually come to think of it, it's the first 10 to 13 that I do. What about you,
Oh,
Emily? Have you been doing these high level activities?
quite a few 10 to 13s. Yes, I will have
Ah,
to see if I remember any of you.
cool,
I know we've
nice.
had a lot of
I've been
repeat.
doing loads of levels
Mhm.
4 to 5. I did a six to
Right.
seven today.
Hmm.
So really nice. Guys, I know that we have people joining us from all over the country here in Italy. And this week in particular, we've also had some people joining us from our school in Valencia, in Spain, and also in Lyon, in France. So welcome. Emily and I, we're both teachers here in Milan. We work in Via Meravigli, which is the kind of the central school. As you can see there, my name is Thiago. That is not an English name. In fact, I am Brazilian. I'm from Sao Paulo originally, though I've spent quite a bit of time in California growing up. And that's it. I'll let Emily also introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. If you don't know me from other lessons, I'm Emily and I'm from the UK originally. So we'll have to see what UK, US, or Brazilian differences there are today. I'm from the middle of England. I'm from a city called Wolverhampton originally. But don't worry, I expect no one to know that. Okay,
So
brilliant.
great. So Emily, yeah, I know we haven't really had much of a chance to talk
Mm,
because we haven't done a webinar together yet. So
yeah.
how have you been doing now that it's week 4 of this lockdown for us?
Yeah, I think I've got used to it a lot now. I'm into more of a routine really
Hmm.
with it and just making sure I go outside a bit, going out on the balcony or spending time doing different things.
Hmm.
But I don't feel as bad as I expected to, which is nice.
Ah, that's nice. Yeah,
How
it's
about you?
funny. For me, in a certain way, it's almost like the opposite, as in I'm doing fine. Uh,
Hmm.
I'm usually the kind of person that I do love to spend some time inside anyway,
Yeah.
especially because I guess I spend so much of my time kind of teaching and talking, most of the day. I do
Yeah.
appreciate the possibility to kind of retreat at the end of the day. But I've actually been kind of missing just seeing people. I've been missing going to
Mm,
school. So actually, these
yeah.
webinars have been keeping me sane. I've been able to
Yeah,
talk
I
a
know what
little
you mean.
bit. But one of the issues is that my apartment is on the ground floor, so I don't have a balcony.
Okay.
So it's more of the lack of fresh air sometimes that
Yeah.
that get to me. But between the
Oh,
PlayStation, Netflix, books, and all, I've been keeping myself quite busy as well.
that's good. Yeah. See, I'm on the seventh floor, so I have
Ah, good.
quite a nice view.
Yeah, do you have a
And
night? What do
practice
you
that.
see from your balcony?
Well, we have two. So from the kitchen balcony, I can see the mountains, which is really nice,
Ooh,
which
cool.
is just amazing. From mine, just the main road, really. But
Also, because
yeah,
the air quality, I've been reading a lot about the improvement of the air quality. Do
yeah.
you see that with the mountains at all?
Yes, you can because often normally it's blocked by smoke, but it's not as it's more often visible at the moment, which is
Great.
nice.
All right, cool. Nice. We have Ilaria who just wrote to us. So
Hi,
she's
Ilaria.
from one of our schools in Padua. So welcome, Ilaria. Anyone else watching us, if you do have a Google account, so you can write a comment, do let us know your name, let us know where you come from. It would be lovely to just kind of have some context here.
Yeah, let us know what you're doing to stay sane at the moment, to
Yeah.
stay happy.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time for sure. But
Definitely.
I do agree with you, Emily. It's kind of become a routine now.
Hmm.
See, before my days felt like they were dragging a bit more, whereas
Yeah.
now they actually go by pretty quickly.
Hmm.
Again, these webinars help quite a bit. I've been doing a lot of evening ones, so
Mm.
So good. All right. Paulo's writing to us from Busto Arsizio, so not too far from Milan. Welcome,
Mhm.
Paolo. And Clea is from Genoa. Beautiful, guys.
Hi.
Really
Welcome, both of
nice.
you.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Okay, so I think we are talking about making generalizations today. What does that mean to you, Thiago? Do you often make generalizations?
I try not to make huge generalizations if I can, because I think it can be quite problematic. But at the same time, I think it is kind of like a human trait. It's a way to cope
Mhm.
with a chaotic universe in which we live in. We have to make some generalizations, one way or
Yeah.
another. Um, but yeah, so it's just taking some patterns that might be common to perhaps a certain group of people. It should
Mhm.
kind of make sense of the reality we live in. That's how I would approach it. What about you, Emily?
Yeah, I think I see it a similar way. I think that generalizations can, if we're not careful, turn into assumptions about people. So I try to separate the two things and recognize generalizations are quite useful in a scientific sense, but maybe if you meet someone for the first time, you talk to someone new, maybe it's better to think about them as an individual.
Yeah, to really keep an open mind. Yeah,
Mm.
definitely. Good. And one thing I would mention really little here, and you guys might have noticed this before, but one difference between American and British English is the S and the Z, or Z as you'd say in British English. See, I
Hmm.
would say generalization with a Z. Things like realize, for example, as well. Tiny minor difference there, but it is one nonetheless. So it could be
Hmm.
interesting to point it out.
Yeah, and also in some academic English, some of you maybe read a lot of legal articles or that kind of thing. You often see the US spelling there as well, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you watching can tell us about some generalizations you know. So here we have maybe gender is a common one, and cultural differences. Maybe you can give some examples to us and tell us what do you feel about
Absolutely.
them.
Oh, we have another example from Pina here. So she's,
Oh,
yeah, US optimization. Yeah, fantastic.
hmm,
And even the pronunciation there can be, right?
yeah,
Optimization. I guess I
yeah.
kind of alternate on this one.
I think I pronounce the I sound, but I don't know if that's a British general thing or if that's my region of the UK. Because my
Yeah.
region, which is the
Yeah, because
Midlands of the
English can be
UK,
quite
often
chaotic
say the I.
sometimes for a lot. Like things like either as well. It's pretty
Yeah.
interchangeable for me. It really depends
Hmm.
on the moment. Sometimes even the flow of the sentence, I might use one versus the other.
Exactly. Yeah.
So cool. Yeah. So guys, do let us know
Let's
any
call a whole.
generalizations if I would just say though, because like this can be a bit of a sensitive topic. Let's
Hmm.
make sure we're all respectful and mindful of what we're saying.
Yeah.
Today we will be looking at some useful expressions on how to generalize politely as well. So
Hmm.
just do keep that in mind, all right? So we can keep this nice and positive as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so I think we're talking about gender immediately. Get into the controversy or controversy, another of our strange pronunciation words there. Um, how much do you generalize based on gender? Is it a big thing for you? Do you think it's useful?
Yeah, and if not for you personally, what do you think about again, to make another generalization, but if you kind of consider your overall context, the people around you in your city, your country,
Hmm.
your neighborhood, your workplace, whatever it is, are there big generalizations towards gender? So we do have a few statements here. Let us know if you agree, disagree, or not. Maybe Emily, maybe we can alternate reading them.
Hmm.
So the
Yeah,
first
sure.
one we have: in most cases, men are more aggressive than women.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think I I partly agree with that. I think one of my problems with gender generalizations is that people often say that this is natural, this is how people instinctively behave. And I prefer the idea that society encourages people to behave in a certain way. And I definitely do agree that men are allowed to be aggressive more than women are, and it's
Hmm.
more acceptable. It's more common in the culture for men to be aggressive. Um, if you go back to nature, if you imagine that there is no social influence, then maybe it would be different. I think that's something to consider there. But certainly, if you think about culture, if you think about how people are encouraged to behave, I do think in
Absolutely, yeah.
general
I
it's
would
true.
definitely even say, if I were to speak from experience here, I would definitely
Hmm.
say aggressiveness is not one trait to describe me, really.
Hmm.
But I remember kind of growing up, I almost felt like I had to express some aggressiveness that wasn't natural,
Mm.
because that is kind of what the culture sort of establishes. I mean, especially I think my Brazilian background and kind of going back to Brazil, there is, I feel that that's a lot stronger than, say, in the US. Although in the US, it's also quite prevalent as well, that idea
Yeah.
of the aggressive man, for sure.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and the idea of age as well, maybe the idea of
mhm,
young men or teenagers being more aggressive.
definitely. Bruno just joined us. Hi, Bruno.
Welcome.
Saying, I think, yeah, I think women here, I would say, Bruno, because we're not talking about specific, like a specific group of women. So I
Hmm.
think women are less aggressive than men. Okay. But, but
They
when
are
they are,
okay.
I love like the dot, 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 dot.
A nice consequence. You could also talk about passive aggressiveness as
Ah,
well, the idea of not being physically aggressive, but maybe making comments or doing small actions that suggest that you are angry or you have violent feelings
yeah.
towards someone.
I would say, see, I'm
Maybe
more
that can
inclined to
help.
being passive aggressive than aggressive, for sure.
Yes, me too. Yes.
Great.
Okay, so the next one we have is women are generally more intuitive than men. What do you think there,
That's
Emily?
another one you do hear a lot, huh? Like, yeah, like female
Mm,
intuition. I don't know really. I kind of tend to this one. I don't even know if there is a big cultural element that would influence this one as much as the first one. See, I think the
mm,
first one, it's possible and it's very likely that people do try to kind of fit within a certain mold and try to behave in ways that the group expect them to behave. But I mean, intuition, it feels like it's something so ingrained in you that
hmm.
I don't know, really. It's hard for me to even have an opinion for the second one. I don't know. What do you
Yeah,
think, Emily?
I agree with you. I think maybe one of the reasons behind the generalization is that women are encouraged to talk about their feelings more. So maybe that's that's an idea that leads to this, um, or maybe in different. It depends how much you socialize. Maybe as a child, definitely I definitely feel I'm more intuitive now than I was a few years ago. I think that's also a generalization you could make about age
Yeah,
that's maybe more appropriate. Um,
definitely.
that's true.
Ilaria seems to agree with that idea. So, do you want to give us some examples, Ilaria? It'd be really interesting to see why you think that. Really good. Thank you.
Mm,
And well, I think the third one kind of relates back to the first one in many ways, that men find
mhm,
it more difficult to express their emotions than women most of the time. Again, I do agree with this to a certain extent, but
Hmm.
as Emily was saying, I don't think it's something that is, that comes from within really, but it is more of a cultural influence. Also because, I mean, yeah, generally speaking, because of this whole idea that men should be, like self-reliant and, talking
Hmm.
about feelings is not a big thing. Sometimes men might even lack an audience to talk about. If
Yeah.
most of their friends are other men who downplay problems. Talking about emotions might not be. You might not have a lot of people to discuss this with.
Yeah, I
So
completely agree. I think at the moment we're having quite an interesting cultural conversation about this, and you have more films or more TV series about masculinity and about how that can be toxic, how that can be valuable in different ways, and this idea of expressing emotions. I think it would be really interesting to see if this moment of culture or the Me Too movement can really help to balance this out some more.
so Bruno, all right. So we have a bit of a, a hot topic here. So I think that women are more intuitive because they were born to be mothers. All right. Well, of course, I mean, women
Hmm.
of course, like in terms of like the physical, there's the physical kind of ability to conceive a child,
Hmm.
and perhaps that bond that a mother and a child has is perhaps, also for this reason, is often, I think, it's just so hard to talk about it.
Yeah, I know it
Described
is.
as like stronger, but obviously then it's not. But it's not like a must, right? And in fact,
Hmm.
a lot of women they don't want to be mothers. Uh,
Hmm.
but that's, yeah, it's an interesting input there, Bruno. Thanks for
Yeah, thank
sharing.
you. Okay, and the final one we have here is on the whole, women are more interested in long term relationships than men, which I don't think is true at all
Yeah,
from my
not necessarily.
experience.
And again, if it is so, I think it's just a lot of it's culture again. It always
Hmm.
comes back to that. So good, guys. I'm just sharing some of the expressions that we're seeing in those sentences because we
Mm.
have some nice expressions to talk about generalization. Things like in most cases, generally, most of the time, on the whole. So this is a nice suggestion. If I can also give you that, is because I know that in English, when we talk, we tend to be very cautious about how we express some big opinions because if you don't use these sentences, they sound a little aggressive in certain ways.
Hmm.
So by adding just a little bit of that, you kind of open it up for discussion a little bit more. You're saying that,
Yeah.
it is a generalization. Some people might disagree. What do you think? Whereas if you just say men are more aggressive than women, or women are more interested in long-term relationships, it sounds a lot stronger. So if you want to soften it a little bit, these are some nice expressions.
Yeah, absolutely. You can also say that they qualify sentences. They like qualifiers, which is a nice way to think of them. Because as Thiago says, that's it may not be true at all. It may not be true for one individual. It's a nice way to soften what you want to say.
Yeah, to soften the blow is another expression. I
Mm.
guess you guys also use that in British, I imagine, right?
Yes, we do.
Soften the blow. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe there are some more about men and women. Maybe
Yeah, but we can
are there
also,
any others
if
that
yeah,
you
if we
have?
want to, maybe you can talk about men and women if you want, guys, or if you want to talk about cultural
Yeah.
generalizations. Okay, let's just try mostly to use the expressions. So, what do you
Hmm.
think? What are some generalizations that you have heard about? Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you believe in personally, but
Hmm.
what do we hear about? Well, the last one, see, I would say is true, unfortunately, right? In most cases, men make more
Hmm.
money than women. So that
Yeah.
is for an example of a generalization that unfortunately is true in most contexts still. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And broadly speaking, CEOs of companies are male still.
Yeah. As you
So
get to
I
the
think,
higher, yeah, positions, definitely we tend to
yeah.
see a lot fewer women. Yeah.
I think I find it easier to talk about generalizations when they are fact based, as these two are, rather than trait or character based. I think for me there is something in me that fights against that kind of generalization,
Yeah.
even if they do come into your head quite easily. Yeah, and we have the spelling of trait there. Trait is just another characteristic.
Exactly. So do let us know here, guys, any generalizations, anything at all. Just try to use the expressions. That's the most important thing. All right, I can give you maybe some examples. Maybe we can talk about things from our countries, maybe some ideas or generalizations. I would say, let's see here. If I'm trying to maybe, especially if I'm comparing, let me think of one. If you have one, I'm like, feel free to jump in. I'm like thinking
Sure.
about it.
I think generally British people are quite polite. Find it quite difficult to talk to people they don't know. Maybe there is a joke, maybe that some British people don't know which is worse, whether to open the when the doorbell rings, or when the phone rings and it's a number that you don't recognise. Which one is
So you
worse?
just completely like,
You
you
just
know,
hate both of them.
that's definitely me. Yeah. Then like I'll
Yeah,
immediately look it up, and if it's not something I know it's important, I even block the caller. Don't call me.
exactly.
In fact, my
Yes.
dream would be to find a SIM card that only gives me data and no phone calls. So I just have the
Mm,
perfect excuse. I'm sorry, I just don't have that ability. Just text me. I might still
yeah,
ignore you for a few
absolutely.
days, but write me a message.
As Sherlock says, I prefer to text. It's one of those.
Yeah. Well, Bruno. So I think that in most cases, women are more shy.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think about this, Emily? About this
Um,
generalization?
I I don't think it's necessarily instinctively true. Maybe this is what we were talking about with socialization, with how society works. I think maybe women are encouraged to speak less often in some circumstances. Maybe that's where the idea comes from. Certainly, when I think of many of the people I know, that it's not a true generalization
Hmm.
based on my friends and my experience. But again, maybe it's
Yeah.
cultural. Maybe there are some cultures where that's more common.
Yeah, I did have a conversation with a manager that I had, and she mentioned that a lot of the times is, especially when women are in higher positions of management, etc. Sometimes the same behavior that a man would have is perceived very differently in a woman, and
Yeah.
it is perceived as more aggressive, as negative. Whereas for a man, you would say, oh, he is a leader and he's assertive. A woman is annoying or she is moody. And
Yeah.
so I perhaps one of the reasons why this is a generalization is, can also be some kind of protection mechanism, that you don't want to speak
Yeah.
out too much because of all the negative reactions you get
That's very
by.
true.
Yeah. And Bruins, moreover, most cases, I think they are more studious. uh Yeah, in my experience, I kind of agree with just the experience of it. There's actually, I know in Emily, when we do our CAE preparation at school, we have one of the listening. They talk a little bit about the video games as well, part of like upbringing as well, why that is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you can say that's true because of needing to work harder to get a better job, or maybe they don't have the same social opportunities in terms of sports in some cases. So again, you can make these generalizations, but maybe also think about why why you think something or why it may be true.
Exactly.
Okay, we
And
also
yeah.
have Ilaria. Men do ridiculous actions to get attention of young women. Okay, yeah. I just want to correct your spelling there, Ilaria. I'll just write the spelling of ridiculous for you. Yeah, and again, maybe this is based on confidence. Maybe they are prepared to make a fool of themselves. They're confident enough to do certain things.
Sure. Absolutely.
And of course,
Yeah.
not all of them want the attention of young women necessarily. Um, yeah, but
Yeah, definitely. I
some
mean,
some
one
societies.
generalization I could make if I were to compare my experience living in Italy versus living in the States, I would definitely say that broadly speaking, Italian men are definitely a lot more forward with their advances in that sense,
Yes.
in a way that, in the US, in most cases, guys tend to be a lot more kind of held back unless there's alcohol involved. So that's
Yes.
another kind of generalization, but a big difference between these two countries.
Yeah, it's the same in the UK, I think. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
we can
guys,
think on
let
those. Okay.
us know if you have any other generalizations. Okay.
Okay. So maybe these are more general cultural ones now, rather than they're hopefully less controversial in some ways.
Exactly. And then here you just have to fill in the gap, especially in the first half. We do have another comment coming in from Pina. So, generally speaking, men are into beta related subjects, whereas women tend to stick more with alpha studies. Ooh, what do you mean by that? I
Interesting.
like that. I would, yeah, if I could, just the spelling of alpha while we're waiting. But Pina, do you want to elaborate on that? Like, what do you mean by beta related subjects versus alpha studies?
Yeah.
Be interesting as well. Really nice input. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah, as we said, so this is some practice using some more of these qualifiers, some more very phrases to say that you are speaking generally, as well as maybe thinking about what generalizations you know for different cultures.
Exactly. So while you guys think about this, maybe we can just move on and just go. So the first one, I would say I'm pretty sure. So that's another way of making generalizations. You're really focusing on yourself, on your opinion. It's not just false certainty, but just mostly you. So I'm pretty sure that Spanish food is, and then plug in whatever adjective you want here in the comparative. So I'm pretty sure that Spanish food is better, it's spicier, is cheaper.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever you want there. I don't
Let us
think
know
there
what you
is
think.
anything.
Spanish food, or put another type of food. That's fine. You can put another nationality if you want to finish that with a generalization.
Yeah. So the second one we actually saw in the previous slide. So the second one we have broadly speaking. Okay, I think Pina used a variation on this with generally speaking, which is
Mm-hmm.
exactly the same. Broadly just means widely. If you are not aware of that word already, you can use the adjective broad as well. If you ever go to the UK, a lot of towns have a broad street, which is just one of the big
Yeah. Or
streets.
in New York City, you got Broadway,
Of
right? You
course,
have all the
yeah.
musicals, right? The street is quite broad. That's why Broadway. Great. The third one, on the whole, Americans are more than the British. And that's a nice construction here as well. Sometimes we do use the article the with the adjective to talk about an entire population. Doesn't work with every nationality, right? But you can say the French, the British, but you wouldn't say the Italian. Say the Italians or Americans. Americans, you wouldn't use the at all. You wouldn't say the Americans. It's funny, huh?
See, I would,
You
but
would.
maybe yes, I have
The
definitely used that in the
Americans.
past. Yeah, the Americans are more likely to do this or that.
For some
Yeah,
reason, I don't know why, but when I think the Americans, it sounds like kind of condescending.
probably
Oh
because
yeah, the
maybe it
Americans.
is.
You know what I mean?
It can be. It
Yeah,
can
but I
be.
wouldn't. But I mean, I wouldn't
Maybe
say
that's the
the
British
French
referring
doesn't
to the
sound.
Americans.
That's funny.
I
Yeah.
don't know. It's yeah. But I think often that's true if you say the English or the
Yeah.
Brits.
The
That could
Brits, the
be.
French,
It can
the
also.
Japanese.
Yeah.
But that
Maybe
one doesn't
depending on your
sound so
tone.
so condescending. Yeah, obviously, yeah, the tone will play a big part here for sure. Yeah. Huh.
Okay, so number 4, we have in most, so probably in most cases here, in most cases.
In most cases, yes.
Yeah. So again, this seems quite scientific to me. We are talking about individuals as scientific subjects, really. So in most
Exactly.
cases, this is true.
That's right. And then the fifth one, I would say most of the time. Most of the time, younger people prefer to something than another category. So yeah, guys, do let us know what you think, and don't be shy. Again, it is a whole lesson about making generalizations, so we
Absolutely.
understand that nothing is coming from a bad place here.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you guys participate, then it's a chance for us to maybe correct spelling, maybe articles here or there, and to keep the conversation going.
Definitely. Maybe I'll just mention one more useful phrase. You can also say "in the main," which is another quite nice one. So, which is just another phrase you can use the same way as any of these others, or
Yes,
mainly as well,
mainly.
just to add some more variety. Since you are levels 10 to 13 now, so I'd like to give you some
Yeah.
alternatives.
In the main, that's like new for me as well.
Okay,
I don't think
yeah.
I've ever like come across that one. In the main, good one.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think it's one that I've probably read more than said aloud,
hmm
but it always sounds quite nice. So
Yeah,
maybe you'll start using it some more.
yeah, it sounds really nice. In the main, like that.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Well, let's. Yeah, exactly. Let's have a look at some other. Oh, nice. Okay, so this is an exercise that actually asks you guys to use the new expressions that we saw to change the statements into kind of more of a general statement. So see, dogs are more affectionate than cats. That seems like you know what you're talking about. You're totally sure of this. Let's make this more general, more of an opinion, perhaps. So here you don't even have to think of examples, just use the new language. So what is it? Dogs are more affectionate than cats. Dogs are more independent than, or cats are more independent than dogs. Anglo-Saxon cultures have a more linear view of time than Mediterranean cultures. Ooh, that's an interesting one.
It is, yeah.
Never thought of it like that.
No, I haven't.
And Americans are less formal than the British. There is a TED talk that I saw. I'm not sure if you've seen that, Emily. It's about linguistics, and it talks about the how some, depending on the language that you're speaking, like entire ways that you think about things change. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that, but I've heard the theory before about, the language that shaping how you think about things,
Yeah. So one of the
which
things
I
I was
think
reading
is
about the
interesting.
difference between Anglo-Saxon and Mediterranean, I'm thinking about the difference of English and the Romance languages that she mentioned in the talk, was that in English, since we always have the subject in our sentences, We tend to attribute blame a lot more easily.
Okay.
So there is a study that was done with a picture of there was a guy in a museum, like a tourist with a big backpack, who was kind of like, taking a step back. And as he was doing that, he was about to hit a very precious vase, right? And so in English, most people would refer to that. It would say he broke the vase. Whereas in languages like Italian or Spanish, most people would say it in a way that would kind of translate to the vase broke itself or the vase got
Okay.
broken. So you
I like
attribute
that.
less meaning. You focus more on the facts.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, whereas in English we need the passive to do that. And
exactly.
probably if something is very immediate, that's less common.
Yeah, did you see the guy broke the vase? Whereas, oh, did you see the vase was broken? Yeah, we wouldn't really say that, would we?
No, no, we wouldn't. Oh, yeah, very interesting. I know there was another study a few years ago about different, I think different Romance languages again, and the different genders they have for words and how that impacted how they thought about those objects. So I think in German, I think the moon is masculine, and in
Yes,
French, feminine, and it
absolutely.
changes the
Yeah.
metaphors. It changes how they imagine those objects.
She
It's
goes
quite
over
interesting.
exactly that example as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, how like the word bridge she uses. How in German the bridge, if I'm not mistaken, is considered feminine, and so if you
Hmm.
look, most adjectives used to describe a bridge tend to be beautiful, etc. Whereas in Italian, it's like about how strong the foundation of the bridge is, and how, you know what I mean.
Wow.
So all
Yeah.
that kind of plays out in the those like cultural things we talked about before. Yeah.
It's really interesting. Yeah. So I quite enjoy that English doesn't have such a reliance on gender
Yeah.
personally. But
It's quite
but
nice, definitely.
it's very interesting to observe these languages that
Though,
do.
one thing that is funny is that, even though English is my dominant language, but
Hmm.
Portuguese is my first. And so there are
Yeah.
some very few things that, for example, counting is something that I definitely very much in my head do in Portuguese still.
Hmm.
And one thing as well is that I tend to I still attribute genders to objects.
Interesting.
Or maybe
Yeah.
because, yeah, having Portuguese and then Italian and Spanish, they kind of all have that.
Hmm.
So even unconsciously, I tend to see objects with a gender.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. I can't imagine how that feels,
Yeah.
to live the world that
Yeah,
way.
exactly.
It's
It's
nice.
about, yeah.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, maybe if you guys, yeah, if you do, let us know if you can, guys. It's better if we have participation,
Hmm.
but I guess we can show you guys a couple examples here. Maybe the first one.
Yeah. So some of these I think maybe go overboard. They maybe generalize a bit too much in some ways. We have dogs are more affectionate than cats becomes in most cases dogs exhibit more affection towards humans than cats. So it seems like it's maybe removing all emotion completely from the sentence. So it's no longer having the quality of affection, it's no longer a
Yeah,
characteristic of dogs. It's completely about the behavior, it's completely what's observable. So it's very, very scientific
yeah.
there.
Yeah, because that is something that we do a lot with animals as well. Sometimes is to attribute like human traits. I get quite angry sometimes, even watching. Sometimes I get suggestions on Instagram about like cute dogs or cats, and then
Oh,
people just kind of, oh, that's so cute, but you're like, oh my gosh,
mhm.
no, that dog is not hugging that child. You know,
Yes,
because it wrap its like arms around it. It's like it's not a sign of affection. That dog is gonna bite that child, because it's hugging it
yes.
around its neck, which is a vital part of its body. So it's like,
Mhm. No,
yeah,
that's very true. Yeah, that's interesting to make it about uh, yeah, make it less personal. So I think, as you say, we often assume that what we see is emotional, but that may not be true. Who knows what animals are thinking? So, are you a cat person or a dog person, Thiago?
Ooh, I love them both, but I would
Mm.
definitely say I'm a dog person.
Okay.
Because I mean, yes, because I mean the idea, yeah, of being affectionate. I mean, dogs are just always down to cuddling and coming near you, and
Mm.
even if like ultimately they're probably just thinking of the food. It's I do appreciate it about dog, but I do find cats very entertaining in ways that dogs aren't as much. Just their behavior and
Hmm.
yeah, they're really fascinating of like how much they learn things, and at the same time, I find it interesting that although they might live with people for so long, they do maintain a little bit more of a seemingly wild side.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I prefer cats partly for that reason. There's something quite unknowable about them which appeals to me.
Yeah, and they're definitely less needy
Yes.
as well. So if you sometimes if you just want to, I don't know, dogs are just always begging for it. Although cats can as well.
Hmm.
But I feel like they're happier just on their own if you're not necessarily trying to have them on you or
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Ah, we have Bruno. Okay.
exactly what we were just saying, right, Bruno? So generally, cats love to be alone. More so, I would say, more so than dogs.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, that's true. Yeah, I mean, also if
Yeah.
you consider the even the origins, right? Their early ancestors. I mean,
Hmm.
dogs are what we call pack animals. So they live in a pack, a group, whereas cats are not really pack animals, behaviorally speaking.
Hmm.
Or to stay alone, sure, to be alone, to stay alone. They both work.
Hmm. Yeah, and maybe that's quite similar to our second point here. Cats are more independent than dogs. Again, in this example, it becomes more about behavior. They behave more independently than dogs. You could also maybe say they spend more time alone than dogs if you want to be more scientific about it. Um, yeah, but definitely, I think it's very difficult for these examples to completely remove emotion and affection because these are animals that inspire such emotion in general.
So we have a really good question here. I've
Mm.
asked myself the same. Can I also towards instead of toward? We definitely do while speaking. I actually don't know, Emily, the proper. Do you?
I don't. I often wonder which one is correct because I think I personally more often use towards with the S.
Me too, but then
Um,
I remember reading that you shouldn't do that. And so I've
okay.
been like confused. So when I'm writing something like serious, more formal, I tend to avoid it.
Okay. I
But
don't know.
speaking, I
I think
definitely use towards a lot.
yeah, yeah. I think both are acceptable, I believe. Maybe in some circumstances toward is the better one. I don't know. I think personally,
Yeah.
as I say, I use towards with the S more often myself.
Yeah, same for me. Same for me. Really nice question. Yeah, sorry we don't have like a
Mm.
super clear answer, but I would say if you're speaking, it's fine. Either way. And yes, I have read that maybe toward is a little better in formal context,
Great.
but don't quote me 100% on this. I will look it up. Yeah, if Pina, if you want to join us in future webinars in which I'm present, I will be sure to have an answer for you. So remind me.
Yeah, or let me know as well if you hear anything
Yeah.
more. Yeah, so guys, if you want to have a go at these other two, or perhaps we could also move on, do a different exercise for the last few minutes.
Yeah, that I'm really curious what they mean with that third one. So Anglo-Saxon, so a more
Yeah,
linear view of time. I mean,
yeah,
how?
I'm not I'm not sure what that means either, really. Um,
I mean, do you think it's like what awareness of like past and future versus
oh, maybe.
yeah, oh, Ilaria has an example for us. So generally dogs wait they wait for humans to go out of the house, and cats always go out alone. Yeah, yeah. So kind of that
Yeah.
idea of independence. If I could just make some small corrections here, Ilaria. So I would say generally dogs wait for humans to go out or to leave the house. Um, and then a nice word here, whereas. Whereas
Mhm.
cats always go out alone. Okay.
Yeah, great. We
Laura
also
said
have that
generally
one.
Americans seem more friendly than British.
Ah,
I feel like Americans, generally speaking, are definitely more bubbly. So
hmm,
maybe that's where this comes from. Americans are quite
yeah,
loud. Like, do you
or
feel the
more
presence of an
upbeat.
American in the room? I think.
Hmm.
But actually, in terms of, I don't know, friendliness, again, a generalization, but I actually find British people a bit more real and like down to earth.
Hmm.
Whereas, I don't know, with Americans, sometimes I feel like it can be a lot of like, oh my God. I don't know. It feels a bit more,
Yeah,
I
I
don't want to say
think definitely in
superficial,
culture, I
but
think that's there. I think in if you watch an American TV series and see what people are interested in versus a British one, I think the British people are more maybe relatable and they're more interested in poorer people and everyday people, whereas in my experience of American reality TV shows or any comedies, it tends to be slightly richer, um, more privileged people in those. But again, that is another generalization I'm making, of course. Um,
yeah, no, but I
it's
think
an
there's definitely
interesting
some
one.
truth to what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Just one thing about the grammar, Laura. You can say than the British. British is one where we just use it as a singular, or you can say than Brits if you want to refer to British people. You can also say Brits.
Exactly. And Bruno has another example for us. So Anglo-Saxon culture has, I would say, because it's singular, has a more linear view of time than Mediterranean cultures because of summertime. Yeah, but then I feel like then in that sense, it's like the opposite because if the seasons here are so, I don't know, you feel it. But then again, Anglo-Saxon culture depends on what we're talking about.
Mm,
I mean, it's
yeah,
easy to generalize. I think sometimes like British weather more so. I mean, no, you can't do that with the U.S. It's like a very big country,
yeah,
geographically speaking. You have a little bit of everything. But yeah,
yeah. I mean, maybe it's about, as you say, past, present, future. Maybe it sees time as a line in a certain way. Um, But yeah, I'm not. I'm also not really sure what it's referring to. But this this answer doesn't help us. It's just rephrasing the same point, really.
yeah. And then we got our last one here, which is Americans are less formal than the British.
Hmm. See, one thing I find interesting about Americans is many people in restaurants and things, they are very certain that they're certain to say ma'am or sir. There is always that address to customers in my experience of America. Whereas in Britain, then they will just say, all right, love, or they won't
That's true. Yeah. I
name.
would say, yeah, before moving to Europe, I also had a bit of that idea that, yeah, Americans are more informal. The
Yeah.
British are quite proper, right? As we say. I guess in some ways, I guess that is sort of True, but yeah, I agree with you, Emily. In many ways, it's not. Also, there are things in American culture that there's some words, some bad words that you will
Mm.
never hear an American person
Yeah.
say, or if they do, it's. Whereas I feel British, generally speaking, tend to be a bit more relaxed with them, even using swear words than
Hmm.
Americans are.
Definitely, yeah. I would say the British are more self-deprecating,
Right? Yeah.
which is quite a nice word for you.
Great.
You
Yeah.
can make fun of yourself. Um, I think that's often true if you look at comedy.
Yes, Paolo. Overall, absolutely.
Hmm.
Overall. Yeah, in
Yeah,
fact, personally, I would use overall more often than I would on the whole.
I think I would as well. Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
that's
Nice question there.
definitely, yeah.
Okay, I
So,
think we are out of time,
oh,
are
we're
we?
running out of time. Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
went very quickly.
Yeah. So,
um,
guys, yeah, thank you for some of these examples that you gave. I know, yeah, it's not the easiest of topics.
mhm,
And but most importantly is that you focused on the expressions as well, on how to express generalizations a bit more efficiently, and even perhaps more politely. I think English speakers would definitely appreciate the politeness in that, because
mhm.
one thing that I would say we all kind of have in common is we're not super direct. Um,
Yes.
and so all of these little short sentences can really help in making you seem a little like softer when you speak.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good comment that I completely agree with. Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope you all have a lovely evening, guys. If you do have any questions, maybe write them down and you can always ask us in a future webinar if you have any questions at all. And we hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely, guys. Have a wonderful evening and thanks for the participation.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.